is about using send effects in Logic, and to demonstrate this I'm going to use piano from UVI Grand Piano Model D and Duduk from UVI World Suite. And first this is a really quick short piece I just made, so I will play it so you can just hear what it all sounds like completely dry. I've taken piano is a basic dry setting, which is actually quite beautiful on its own. And on the Duduk, I have taken off the reverb, and I needed to go to the effects to bypass a delay, a very subtle delay that was on the default preset. So I've got a completely dry setting here. This is what it sounds like. So the first thing I'm going to do is just solo the piano and put a reverb onto that. So from the sends, I recommend not inserting it here because when you use sends it uses less Mac memory for the session, but it also gives you more flexibility in what you can do with the send. So what you do is you, under the instrument, whether this be UVI or other kinds of instruments, you go down to the send button, you choose bus, and you can just pick any number, but we'll just start with 1. And I recommend as soon as you select that, name it something. So I'm just going to call it Hall Reverb. And then I would recommend right away giving it an amount. If you don't see the ability, like this looks like a different color and you don't see the ability to make this go on, it means that on record you still have low latency on, which sometimes turns that off. But just keep that off while you adjust this so that when you're playing back your audio you can definitely see this work. So I would say put it up quite a lot to start. This is probably going to be too much, but anyway. Okay, so to see the send effect again, right now I'm seeing my stereo output view, but to see the send again, this one called Hall Reverb, you just click in the middle of the blue button for send and hit which one it is, which is right there. It says 1. And then what you see now is where you will insert the effect. So I'm going to use Chromaverb stereo, and I'm going to go to a hall, and I will just use this piano concert hall. And then you'll notice here that the dry signal, because I did put this in as a send, when I now put an actual effect on this where I've sent this, then what happens is that by default the effects you load, dry signal is all the way down, which it should be, and that's part of a good separation that you get. Your dry signal is already on the main audio track, so this send, which is actually this, has a dry signal but all 100% total amount of the effect. So what that means is that when you start turning this, you're just adjusting the amount, some percentage of this that will be heard. So let's just see what does this sound like when I play the piano back. I'm going to mute the send, and here was dry just a little bit. And then here's with the send on it. it's a little bit subtle, so I'm just going to crank this all the way like to there. And actually, I'd like to try something else, like maybe there's something that's a little more outdoorsy, so I'm going to switch this. So what I did was I just went to this part of the send. I'm going to switch it to something a little more outdoorsy. Let's see, let's try clean space. Let's just see how that works. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, even though this one's pretty warped and weird, I kind of like it because of how exaggerated the effect is, so therefore I'll show when I bring this amount way back down, it should start to sound a little bit more normal, but kind of cool. And it's so, it goes into so much like pitch shifting and other sorts of effects that I'm going to bring this way down. It's very subtle, but it'll still sound like you can hear it. Okay. Now, another thing that you can do is now once you've got the send there, you can start adding other parameters just on the send alone. So before I do that, I just want to point out that there's an interesting thing that you can do to hear only what is the send, which is that you can literally solo the send, but take off any playing or mute. Actually, muting won't probably work, but you have to just take it off of solo in this case. And all that's being soloed right now is the sound of that reverb only. So listen to this. And I'll take that back off and I'll keep the piano on. But what I want to do is I want to add something else to the reverb itself. So I want to put a channel EQ. And even though that reverb I noticed it had sort of an EQ thing that took off the low end, I still want to see what is, what's happening on the sound here on EQ wise. So just look at the frequencies that pop up from the bottom when I play it. So one effect that can be really nice, if you see this sort of curve like about from here to here where most of the sound is coming in on the EQ frequencies, one of the techniques that has been pretty helpful is to put on the reverb itself. So right now I've got an EQ that's on only the reverb, not on the sound. It brings out a little more separation of the sound and a nice kind of quality where you can hear the ambience of the reverb when you, and the spatial qualities of the instrument and the space around it. When you take off this low amount and you take off this high amount, like that pretty much. Let's just play it again to see where those sounds are. up here, when I have it, all the EQ happening, revealing high parts of the reverb, there's a lot more noise to it, but when I bring it down like this, it's a little more, it's warmer for sure. So here's an example. And also I could be taking off a little extra of the bass range from it, so I could really limit this to just sort of this mid to higher frequency, about like that. And since I have this currently too high, I'll just bring that back way down so it's more subtle. And now moving to this sound, one of the nice things about send is that now when you move to another sound, if I wanted to put this Duduk instrument sound into the same space, I would just put a send to that same one that I created, like this. And then bring this up. And same thing with this, I really need to take it quite a bit down. And it would be interesting for us to just know what range is that Duduk playing in, so let's see what are those frequencies. Okay, so now you can also add many sends, so you can add a new effect. For example, on Duduk I want a little bit of delay. I'm just going to mute, actually what I'm going to do is switch this one and make a new send to 2 before I add the reverb back. So I'll put this up a lot so we can hear whatever delay we add. And on 2, see how it says aux 2. So now I'm going to change this label here to delay. And on the audio effect, I'm going to choose Delay Designer, which I got from here, Delay Designer Stereo. And then I'm going to choose a simple dotted alternating pan. Let's just see if this 8th note is too fast or not. So, I mean, it's kind of nice, but it's obviously way too much, so I just bring down this amount, like to subtle, more subtle. And then you could go back and add in that reverb as well, a tiny bit. So now I'll just play how it sounds together. But another thing, just to give you ideas of what could be interesting, is you could also start to add, say that you made a third send, or just on one of these. Um, you could even do things like add a direction mixer, um, which is imaging direction mixer, and then you could sort of force like the effect to be a little bit out one way, say like a reverb, but then you could put a slightly different EQ'd reverb on the going off to the left on a separate send. So you could get very creative on how you use this and try different things, just experiment with it. And here's how the piece sounds together.